In life, the decisions we make are all based on priorities, on the things we consider valuable. Very often I hear people say to me, I'm too busy at work, I'm building a business. But you know, we only live once, and you really need to make choices. What are the most important things in life? And I would just say one short formula for that: the things that will last. We can go to restaurants, we can eat, we can travel, but they're all impermanent. When it comes to marriage, it comes to relationships, it's one of the only ways that we will make a permanent impact on the world, on other people's lives. So as important things are in our lives, it's important to also prioritize. And that sometimes takes courage and strength, because we get so used to what we're doing, it's hard to change course. I'm reminded of a story of a couple that I knew that were very wealthy, and they came to consult with me whether they should have a child. And I asked why not. They said because it's very expensive. The woman said to me, she's an actuary. I said, how expensive exactly? She said it's around $2.5 million from the time you become pregnant until that child turns into an adult and pays back their debt to society. So I decided to invite this couple to a sister-in-law of mine who has 17 children, but I didn't tell them this. Anyway, long story short, we're sitting at the Shabbos table and the children start coming and coming and coming. Beautiful children, it's a beautiful home, they have no money. And they were shocked. They said, where are all these children from? So they said, this is their parents. They said, how many marriages? One marriage. So I whispered to the actuary and I said, so what is 2.5 million times 17? My point was that money is a means. The greatest blessing in life is to have children, is to have the love that it brings, and that's what money is for. And when money becomes more powerful than love and the beauty that we bring into this world, I would say one has to reconsider their priorities. Well, the real life benefits of marriage, in addition, of course, to the spiritual ones, is number one, you have a companion for life. You have someone to speak to. You have someone who cares about you. You have someone who will miss you when you're not there. You have someone who can be intimate with you, someone that you can be vulnerable with. You know, we live in a world where we're very afraid to be vulnerable. So if you find the right mate, the right match, you're finding someone that you can celebrate your life with, total trust, not feeling judged, not feeling in any way negative, no fear. I mean, that to me is one of the most important things in life, is that we're nurtured, we're validated, we feel we matter, and we're better to have that. When we're children, we get it from our parents. But in marriage, you get it from another adult that chose to be with you and wants to be with you for the rest of your life. Jews absolutely believe in soulmates. As a matter of fact, the expression goes, we're not physical beings on a spiritual journey, we're spiritual beings on a physical journey. So the essence of life is your soul. You know, God forbid, after death, the soul and body separate. The body is inanimate, lifeless. Your personality, your character, your unique skills, everything about you that shines is about your soul. So meeting a soulmate is essentially, think of it like two musical notes coming together and creating a greater symphony. That's the essence of what a soulmate is about. Very often, the opinions and attitudes we have to marriage, for good or for bad, come from our experiences in our early formative years. If, God forbid, you grew up in a home where your parents were bickering, fighting, you're not going to be left with a good taste for marriage. If you grew up in a home where your parents were loving and nurturing and validating, you're going to see marriage as a force that enhances your life. Look, it's like someone who asked the question, I'm very happy by myself in my own bedroom, I squeeze my own toothpaste, why do I need anyone else in my life? We are human beings, however. We thrive on love. We thrive on companionship, on conversations, on cross-pollination, on interaction. So it'd be like someone saying, yes, it's safer to be alone, but it's richer to have a relationship. Sadly, those of us that have experienced divorce in our families or our siblings or our parents don't want to get hurt. But on the other side of the coin, when you're not ready to get hurt, you also will not find true fulfillment. You know, if you lock yourself up in the armor, in defensive armor, nobody can get in, but nobody can get out as well. You know, life has risks, but like anything valuable in life, it's going to come with a price. And the price is, yes, you're going to meet a person, and they potentially can hurt you. That's what love is about. But the value of love is greater than the risk of no love. Like they say, the greatest risk of all is not taking a risk. So despite our histories, we don't want to be victims of the past. We don't want to be victims of circumstances. You want to take control of your life, and no matter what happened to you, even if it was traumatic or other negative experiences, you don't want that to define your future. Why would you allow that to, so to speak, now let your wings spread and be the best you can be? Well, the Jewish concept of marriage in Hebrew is called kiddushin. What that means in simple English, it means sanctified. That it's not just a relationship like business partners or customer and employee and employee or customer and seller. A relationship in marriage is about a sanctified connection that's much greater than the sum of the parts. So it's true, if marriage is just a party and you sign a paper, there's no real value in that. But if marriage brings the third partner, the Talmud says, the third partner into your relationship, which is God, and it sanctifies your relationship, and it creates a certain eternal connection that will last much greater than the sum of the parts, that's what marriage in Judaism is all about, and therefore it will only enhance whatever it is that you have already. Even if one can't have children, God forbid, there's absolute reason to get married, because marriage, number one, you need a companion. Just because you can't have kids does not mean you don't need someone that loves you, that you love, that nurtures you and cares about you. A second thing, an interesting thing to state, the Zohar, the classic work of Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, says that even if a couple cannot have children, or they're beyond having children, they're too old for children, every time they're intimate, they create spiritual souls. Now, if they're blessed, God will send those souls down to bodies. But even if not, they always create something, because that's what love does. Two people who like each other can be a crush. It could last one night, it could last 1 year. But values is where the relationship is cemented into something greater. You share a value, let's say the value of inviting guests to your home, or being charitable and kind. That adds another dimension to just liking each other. Liking each other is also very self-contained. I don't want to say the word selfish, but self-contained. Whereas values take the love that you have, takes the love that you have and spreads it out and becomes a light that shines to others as well. Okay, the $1 million question. What can I do to help myself get married? Well, let's first establish that it's case by case. No one size fits all. Everybody has their own challenges, their own unique personalities. But if I were able to sum up in a formula what one can do to enhance your chances is introduce a word which comes from Hasidic thought. The word is called bittul. Bittul means not worshiping yourself and opening yourself up to something greater than yourself. Most relationships suffer and ultimately deteriorate because the self-consumed and self-interest of individuals ultimately clash. So in Judaism, there's the concept that you need to be able to have something that suspends your ego, a certain modesty, a certain humility, embracing something greater than yourself. If the couple does that, you can rest assured that this will last. So the thing that you can do most is don't worship yourself. Don't be focused completely on you and your needs. Be open to hearing another opinion, a perspective that may not be yours, that maybe you can't control, and that makes you a far greater person. It broadens your horizons and much more likely to find the right soulmate. If your friends don't like the person you're dating, you need to determine whether the friends are right or they're wrong. Some of us have friends that may be jealous of us. They may be overcritical. They may be overprotective. So I can't say that friends are always a good barometer of whether the person you met is the right one or not. On the other hand, friends do care. So I would grill them, try to find out why your friends don't like the person you're dating, and see if there's any legitimacy to it. But I wouldn't just dismiss someone simply because your friends don't like the person. Your friends are not marrying that person, you are. And that's all that really matters. But friends can be friends that can sometimes protect your interests and make you aware of things you may not be aware of, you may be blinded to. So how does one know when they're ready to start thinking about marriage? I think this most obvious thing is when you start thinking, when you start feeling a need, when you start feeling lonely, feeling that it would be helpful or great to meet somebody. Obviously, age matters. If someone feels that way at age 11, I wouldn't suggest they go to get married. But if you're even late teens, like 19, 20, 21, definitely the years that go beyond that, it's a time where you really come to a point of maturity. You've grown apart from your family in a good way. You cut the umbilical cord, and now's the time to find that person, that Mr. or Mrs. Special in your life. I think that listen to the voices within you. And if there are voices of fear and hesitation, challenge that. Like, why would you be concerned? But I think most people will know when they're ready. Well, some people find ways to get married. They create like grocery lists of all the criteria they feel they need. I find that to be a little controlling. Be spontaneous. Try to avoid lists. Obviously, you want someone that's kind, that's warm, that you can trust. But if you start making too long of a list, it's going to be almost impossible. And then you're going to start comparing, and it gets too complex. You need someone you can trust. Let me put it simply. Someone that you feel, no matter what comes in the future of your life, you'll have someone that you can sit down with and have a conversation and feel you're going to come up with a good answer. That's really what it comes down to. Many of the things that people put on lists I find to be either optional or just plain distracting. So how do we know whether we can trust him or her? There's a line that I once heard, I'm not sure where it comes from, but I really think it's very accurate. Trust is not built on perfection, it's built on accountability. If you think perfection, there's no such thing as a perfect person. Everyone will make mistakes. Trust is built that the person makes a mistake, they don't cover it up, they don't run away, they don't blame others, but they'll be accountable. And the more accountability there is, the more you can trust. And it takes time. If you feel someone's not trustworthy, don't just dismiss it, let time pass. You can test someone, not in an arrogant or cruel manner. Just see how they are under the circumstances. Accountability. That honesty and integrity is really the seeds of trust. At what point in a relationship is it time to commit or leave? It's hard to really quantify in general terms. I think, again, it's case by case. But I'll just spell out certain things. Let's, for argument's sake, one of the parties has betrayed the other through infidelity or some other serious infraction. So you have to look at it. Are you capable of forgiving that person? Do you feel that person has true remorse, or are they just paying lip service? If you feel that whatever you're trying doesn't work, to stay in an unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship, either because it makes you feel comfortable or you don't want confrontation, is not wise. But I cannot make a statement that it's always that way. It really comes down to the dynamic. If the person who did whatever was unforgivable, real remorse, real regret, shows a true interest in improving the relationship. But if not, very likely they'll repeat it. So you might as well cut your losses, so to speak. It gets more complicated if the relationship has already have children, because now there are other people that will be impacted. But there too, there are things that simply you have to ask yourself the question, is staying with him or her healthier than leaving? Now we all know if you can stay together, it's always the best option. And the last resort is to separate or divorce or just break up the relationship. But you really want to make sure that you're making the right decision And it's always good to get objective opinions because we may be clouded, our judgment may be clouded by our own emotions. Well, very often, many of us are waiting for the other person to make a move. And basically, they get trapped in this vicious cycle. She doesn't make a move, he doesn't make a move because nobody wants to take the first leap because of pride or not wanting to be hurt. But true love is about being vulnerable. You have to be able to take a risk. So I would not wait in any relationship until you see a sign from the other person. If you really feel strongly about it, some way express it. Obviously, don't leave yourself completely exposed, but there's nothing wrong to initiate, both man or woman. And that usually is quite freeing because you see that you're following your instinct. And if the person doesn't reciprocate, in time, that may be a sign they're not that interested as you are. And then that may be enough reason to end it. The difference between a crush and true love is that one is temporary. You can have a crush on a teacher, you can have a crush on a guy or a girl, and it's not lasting. The key to the lasting part is recognizing that love is not what we see in movies and in books. It's not about love at first sight, getting so excited. That's not love. That can be an infatuation, that can be a momentary experience. Love is something like planting a seed in the ground, and it begins to grow. And over the years, two people who live with each other, who are sanctified and married and committed to each other, after a while they do small little things together, they become and feel inseparable. That's true love. And that's lasting, as opposed to a temporary state. Infatuation can turn into love. Not always, but you want to distinguish between the two. If the infatuation then goes into the next stage of maturity, where you're ready to be there for each other, even when it's not comfortable. Remember, infatuations are usually when everything seems so rosy and so fantastic. But true love is when you've also gone through challenges, and it still withstands the challenge, and you continue to love each other. So if it started as an infatuation and led to that, great.
What if he or she is less religious than I am?
What if he or she is less religious than I am? Is that what you asked? So let's talk about religion and relationships, where one person is more committed, more religious, more committed, and the other person than the other. My rule for this is always, it's not two people don't have to be exactly in the same stage of commitment, but they should be going in the same direction. So for example, let's say the woman is keeping Shabbat and the guy is not, or the other way around. If he's open to it and he's growing, that's a good sign. But if they're going in opposite directions, where he is essentially leaving religion more and more, and she's getting closer, that usually is a recipe that won't work. So it's about being in the same direction. It doesn't have to be exact. It could be one's a little ahead of the other. And I find that very often, some people are religious in one area. The male may be more religious, the female may be less religious, then the opposite in other areas. To me, that's a healthy thing because they both can feed off each other. They both grow through each other. It's great to have that type of challenge. But the key is that they both have same standards that they're growing toward. Where they may be right now may be different, but they're going and growing. That's the critical thing, and they're celebrating their mutual growth. Okay, so Jewish dating, according to the Torah way, there's no premarital relations. In other words, there's no experimenting and seeing if you're sexually compatible. The relationship is built primarily on appreciating each other. So of course people ask the question, how will I know that when we get to the bedroom we're compatible? Let's say I love her or I love him. We're intellectually compatible, emotionally compatible, but you know what? Maybe sexually we're not. How could we know? So we're going to get married and then find out that we're not compatible? That's a big question out there. But let's look at the alternative. The alternative is, as we see in society today, that people are experimenting all the time. But I don't think they're experimenting for marriage. I think they're experimenting for pleasure. Sexual pleasure is a very powerful force. And I hear this all the time, especially women say, I feel pressured. I really want to get to know the person. I want to be intimate with someone that I respect, not just someone who wants pleasure from me or with me. So the Jewish way is as follows. Sex is a beautiful thing. and it creates deep pleasure and deep intimacy and deep connection. But it's never divorced from the rest of the person. If it's just that, the purpose is just that, it usually will end in disaster. So Judaism advocates that date someone, get to know them, get to like them. And then this person that I like, I want to love and I want to be intimate with. And if you have all that in place, the intimacy will follow naturally. Intimacy is not about, let me start that again. Intimacy is not about performance. It's not about methodologies. It's about love. Today, a lot of focus is on the action. Intimacy is about a state of being, two people who join together. Women usually understand this better than men. They say love for a man is a verb, and for a woman it's a noun. And when you have that sense of a person where you really have gotten to know, and intimacy did not get in the way, bedroom politics did not take over, you have far more chance of having a pure relationship because you don't have any distractions. It's not like, okay, when are we going to bed? You're able to speak without that agenda in mind, and that creates the most natural, cultivated environment for the best type of intimacy. And yes, the intimacy will follow. It doesn't have to be tested or experimented with. That's the Jewish view. A little longer than the rest. When you look at statistics, with the high rate of divorce and that small percentage of people happily married, you can start saying to yourself, how do I know I'm going to be in that minority? But you know, in life, you could ask the same question about happiness. I think most people are not happy. So the same question can be asked, how can I make sure that I am happy? So let's make one thing clear. In Judaism, we never go by statistics. If we Jewish people went by statistics, we shouldn't be here. We're only 14, 15 million strong. We've gone through a Holocaust that decimated a third of our people. I mean, you go through Jewish history, it doesn't make sense that we're here. But leaders and people who forge ahead don't ask the question how many the numbers are. We have to ask ourselves, what am I doing about my life? What you have is a choice. Regardless of what's going on out there, the crisis of relationships, of intimacy, you have a choice, and you have the total ability to find the person that you deserve in your life. And you have to surround yourself with people that are good influences, good mentors, that can help you get rid of or put aside the baggage or the distractions that sometimes clouds our judgment, and look for that soulmate that's waiting for you. That's the most important thing to focus on. People change. How can I commit now for the next 70 years? Well, some things change and some things don't change. What changes is the material part of our lives. Our looks will change, our strength will change. Things are going to go through the natural process of being subject to the elements, erosion, deterioration, and ultimately death. But one of the most beautiful teachings in Judaism is that you're not just a mortal material creature. You have a soul. And when you access that soul, you're able to continue living in a way that things don't change, they only grow. As we say, a body dies, a soul never dies. So when it comes to relationships, if it's a purely materialistic one, yes, it's going to be subject to change and ultimately erosion. But if it's a spiritual one, where there's a soul involved and your life is involved in soulful matters, you're introducing something that is immortal and eternal and will last forever. She's great, but how do I know I won't meet someone better? Well, let me put it quite bluntly. Whoever you meet, you can say that to. There are 8 billion people on this planet. And anyone you meet may be great, but there's always going to be others that are great. So I think as intelligent people, like anything in life, you're going to buy a home, you're going to buy a car, you're going to buy another commodity. You can't keep waiting till the better one. You have to make a decision. Here's a person that's come your way. They fit the criteria, someone you feel you can love. You have to knock out of your head the possibility there may be someone greater. It's usually the sign of some insecurity or fear to always hold out and maybe there'll be something better. I don't have a better way of putting it. No one will ever live up to my ex. Well, I ask myself the question, so why is she or he an ex if they're so great? Now, if it's something like a death God forbid, I understand. That could be difficult. And I know people who unfortunately lost a spouse, and it's very hard to find a spouse, another spouse, especially if there was such a deep relationship, and yet sometimes people do so. But let's talk about not death. If you have someone in your life that has great qualities and you miss them in that way, you may not find someone that is going to live up to the ex. You'll find someone maybe with other qualities. But I wonder, when I hear that question, what will happen when the new person also becomes an ex? I know people who have a lot of exes. So really, this is a question really of judgment of an individual that maybe they're never satisfied. And you have to look at yourself, not at the ex, look at yourself. What will satisfy you? And to keep on looking for that perfection can be a very self-defeating exercise. I find it hard to open up, and no one sticks around long enough to get to know me. Yeah, that is quite a catch-22. When I hear that statement, I immediately think of the usual suspects. It sounds like a person who's somewhat fearful and insecure, and maybe for good reason, and doesn't let another person in until it's too late. And just that will not work, because someone looking for a relationship wants some reciprocal vulnerability and being open. There are many of us who've been hurt as children, and we're looking for that knight in shining armor to come save us. I think it's somewhat of a childish illusion that someone's going to save you. And if you don't find that, you just close up. So you have to look deep inside your heart and soul and say, look, I don't have to open completely, but I have to open enough to let the other person to see part of me. Or else we could get trapped in a place where by the time you do so, the other person is not sticking around. And I would look at the person, not at the other, at yourself. Why do you have such resistance to opening up? And maybe consult friends or mentors that can help you in that direction to indeed open. If someone feels that they're the only one making concessions in a relationship, well, the first thing you need to do is confirm that that's true. So you may need a third objective party who can look into it and see, is that true? Because you may speak to your spouse or your partner, and they'll tell you, I'm the one that's making concessions. I see that all the time. Everybody says, I'm the one that's making concessions. So it's important to establish some objectivity here. If indeed it's proven that you are the one making concessions, the question is, what type of concessions? Are you being an enabler, a codependent? Are you allowing your other to do things that are abusive and constantly giving in? If that's the case, then you're going to have to rethink and perhaps walk away, or at least make very clear boundaries. If it turns out that it's not the case, the other person is a good person, and you just happen to be concessions, you want to be a pleaser or something, so there's another approach. So it's critical to first diagnose what the reason is and whether objectively true that these concessions are being made, and then address them properly. Sometimes partners have to both concede, they both have to compromise in order to enhance their relationship. If a person is going on many dates and they never feel a connection, I usually lean that you're not doing everything possible. It would be good to talk to someone objective to help look at your own blind spots. What could you be doing? Now, some people don't realize that they can be their own worst enemy. They can be aggressive or too passive. They can be speaking in a way that's testing the other person. So it's hard to state what it is, but you sure need a third-party mentor that can look at the relationship, and look at what you're doing and what you're not doing, and help suggest and coach you to perhaps do things differently that may elicit a different reaction. I've dated every Jewish girl there is, I give up. I hardly believe that you dated every girl. I'm sure there's some you haven't. But I still understand a person can get burned out. You know, even if you date 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, doesn't mean it have to be everyone to get burned out. What I believe in these type of situations, I use this expression: if you do what you did, if you say what you said, if you think what you thought, you're going to have what you had. You need to shake things up. If you're dating people and things are not working, you need to do something different. Maybe travel somewhere, date people from a different country, maybe look at different cultures. You need to do something differently because it seems to me like a pattern that you can get stuck in and not be able to free yourself. No, never stop trying to find your soulmate. It's like stopping to breathe. You never want to do that. You never want to give up. I understand it can be difficult, and that's where friends come into play. It's vital to have friends, supporting friends that encourage you, that give you a vote of confidence. Resignation and giving up is not an option because that will further demoralize you. So just always be aware of that. Now, as far as who we're attracted to, sometimes we're attracted to people that are actually not good for us. And that creates another vicious cycle. So in that context, I would say relationships also pose a challenge to us. They pose a challenge to us because they pose a challenge to our own lives. Like, why is it that you would be attracted to something that is not good for you? Is it because you grew up in a home where there was trauma, where you feel that you don't have any value, that someone with real good qualities would never go for you? Very often I hear people that say, there's no way that guy or that girl is going to want me because I'm like damaged goods. It's really coming from your low self-esteem. So then relationships have to be looked at as something far deeper than relationships. It's really your self-image that needs to be reviewed. And here I would definitely advise, find someone to speak to who's wise, who can look deeper, because it's not the relationship that's the issue. It's you don't know how to look at yourself in a good way. So in many ways you may be subtly or subconsciously damaging, sabotaging the relationship, and you don't even know it. And that's why you need an outside party, because we are all subjective emotionally and we don't always see these blind spots. Like they say in poker, when to fold and when to hold. In Jewish thought, one of the key things to be able to make good decisions is to have a mentor and a friend, because they help you sift through blind spots and other challenges. There's no one way to know this. You have to look at all the criteria. Like, make an argument. Why should I stay in this relationship? Why should I leave? The pros and cons, and write them down, and then review them with a person or two who are objective. Because we ourselves sometimes have already we already have a far gone conclusion, a preconceived conclusion. I think that's the right word. That we already have a conclusion, and now we just want to justify it. Since we're talking about such vital matters, which is the future of your life, it's well worth checking with people who are more objective on this matter. And there are some of us that stay in a relationship far too long, and some that leave too quickly and don't let's see it through. Okay, you're dating a great guy and he doesn't want to get married. Yeah, this is very common, very common. It takes two to tango. So at the end of the day, if he doesn't want to, and you can't elicit from him that he should want to, because you don't want to force it on the person, as sad as it is, you may have to say goodbye, because you can't force and impose yourself on someone else. If the person is such high quality, it could be they have their own blocks and it really won't be good for you. So it's important to have open conversation and let that individual share why they feel it's not going to work or their doubts. You can share your certainty and hopefully something will happen. I find situations sometimes when it's put in those stark terms, the guy rethinks it and says, how could I say goodbye to something so valuable? But there are people for different reasons. They have fear, insecurities, their childhood experiences. You just have to gauge how strong it is. You don't want to marry someone who later is going to start regretting it and telling you about, they weren't sure, you pressured me, etc. So it's vital to have all these components taken into consideration.